For, for 5 years, every Friday, I would visit the Catholics on Ohio's death row. At that time, I was pastor at St. Peter's in Mansfield. Death row was in the Mansfield Corrections. I say I visited them. What would happen would be is I would go in, and there were 5 different pods where there were prisoners on death row. And I would rotate, have Mass in one of them. And then I would go and visit each of the others who could not come, and I'd go to their cell. The prisoners were locked in the cells 23 hours a day. They were in solitary. There was a little window, and then a little slot that was also locked where the food tray would be put through. So a guard would have to accompany me, and he would unlock the food tray, the slot, and I would get down on my knees on one side. The prisoner would get on the other side, and we would talk together, we would pray together, and then if they wanted, I would also share communion. There was one particular inmate named Keith, who probably to fill his time, and that's always an issue, to fill his time, he started painting, and somebody provided him with acrylic paints and those canvas boards to paint on. So lots of times when I'd come by, he would show me his work. And it wasn't really great, but it wasn't bad either, and I could tell he was gradually getting better. Most of his work, most of his pictures were scenery. But one day I came to Keith, and he was very excited. He said, "Father, I got to show you my latest painting. I got to show it to you." And he held it up, and it was a picture of Jesus on death row. Jesus is standing there, and you could see the bars. He was behind the bars. And actually, it was pretty inspiring that he painted that. And he said, well, it says Jesus was executed. He was arrested. He was executed. He was on death row. Well, the truth is, of course, he wasn't in the modern day prison. But I was struck by Keith's insight, because what he was trying to say is, I'm experiencing being in jail, and Jesus was in jail. This is a point of identity for us. I also took a moment to tell Keith that it reminded me of another painting, a painting of Jesus, the refugee, where Jesus was behind barbed wire. And it's a pretty well-known picture. The artist, Brother Robert Lentz, who is a Franciscan, refers to it as the Maryknoll Jesus, because the missionary order of Maryknoll is often working in developing nations where there are a lot of refugees. And as you look at this picture, you see Jesus on the other side of the barbed wire. And if you grew up on a farm, as I did, barbed wire is something you don't mess with. It rips your clothes, it rips your flesh. It is a sign of control. But Brother Robert went on to say, if you really study this picture, you ask yourself the question, which side of the barbed wire is Jesus on? Is he inside the detention center with the refugees? Or are we inside the detention center and he's on the outside looking into us? Either way, it's a point of connection. It's a point of identity. So I have to tell you, with the painting of Keith, of Jesus behind bars in prison on death row, and the painting of Brother Robert, of Jesus as a refugee, I use that to frame my understanding of this gospel story today. And this passage, chapter 25, verses 31 on up to 40, is perhaps the most significant passage in all 4 gospels. It just pulls everything together. And Jesus is saying, what the final judgment is about is not how many times you bow your head, not even how many times you sing Alleluia. It's really, what have you done with your life? I think over the years we've heard so many people say, well, you've got to learn to see the face of Jesus in the poor. That may be true, but that's not what this gospel says. In fact, both the righteous and the unrighteous say, when did we see you, Jesus? They did not see Jesus in the poor. The righteous saw the poor the way Jesus would see them, as sisters and brothers. The righteous saw that somehow they were connected. And I use the word solidarity a lot, that somehow they put themselves with the ones who were in need. Maybe that's what both Keith and Brother Robert were able to do in their paintings, that they saw that Jesus was connected with them, and that we have to be connected with Jesus who's connected with them. And that's where we find Jesus. You always find Jesus in compassion. You always find Jesus when you are compassionate to someone else. Now, there are two pitfalls. The one is that we do it for ourselves. I don't know how many times I've had people say to me, I just love working in the soup kitchen. I do it, and I always feel so good afterwards. And I want to say, I hope you feel good, but I hope that's not why you're doing it. In fact, if you don't feel good, it might be good to remember you're not doing it to make yourself feel good or pat yourself on the back. We take ourselves out of the equation and look at the needs of others. That's how we start to identify with them. That's solidarity. The other pitfall, and I think it happens in any culture and any generation, but it's very prevalent right now, is we can become judgmental. And we can be judgmental of, well, why are those people so poor? Why are they so needy? Why are they homeless? Why are they at our borders? Why did they let themselves get sick? I mean, there's no question. It's easy to become judgmental, and it's always tempting, but we have to hold ourselves back. That is not the point. And Jesus doesn't say, you did it to those who were innocent. No, you help anybody who was in need. This is a challenging passage. It makes us move off center and do something with our faith. And the faith has to motivate it, and it will come back and bless us, no question about it. But that's not why we do it. We do it because we're part of this human family. The people in need are our sisters and brothers. We don't want to forget that. And sometimes, let me tell you, if you take this seriously, it's also very jarring. I remember about 25 or 30 years ago when I was pastor at St. Thomas More in Bowling Green, right here in Wood County. That spring we had a tragedy. It was pretty sad. A little 3-year-old boy, 4-year-old boy, went missing right in our neighborhood next to the church. And the police came over. They were looking for him. And we searched around the church itself, in the pews. We wondered if he had come over. We couldn't find him. The dog was there to try to sniff him out. We couldn't find him. About 2 days later, they arrested a man who had kidnapped the child and eventually killed him. The guy's name was John. I knew John. John was a scary person to look at. He had a history of being in and out of jails, all the way from juvenile detention center, in and out of facilities. He was mentally not stable. He would stop over at church to see me once in a while, and I would talk to him briefly if I was there. Otherwise, he was not allowed to stay. But I also tried to reach out to him because he was alone, and he really did not have the ability to live alone. So when he was arrested and put in Wood County Jail, I felt it was my responsibility to go visit him. So I went out to the county jail, and I asked if I could see him. And they said yes, and then they told me, he's in the holding tank right now. I guess that's where you put somebody who's just arrested. He's in the holding tank, and he's under suicide watch. I said, can I still see him? They said yes. So they went up to this cell, and somebody back in the control room, they must have called him on their walkie, somebody in the control room opened the door. And there's a big, heavy steel door that slid open. And there was John standing in there. And the guard said, you can talk to him in there. I stepped in, and no more than stepped in, and that big, heavy door slammed shut behind me. And I realized I was locked in a 9-by-9 cell with a confessed murderer who was also mentally not stable. Maybe I should have been afraid. I wasn't. I knew that he knew me and respected me. But I will admit I was not very comfortable because of the situation. There was an element of unpredictability. But I did talk to John. And I talked to him, and obviously nothing wrong happened to me. Eventually I was able to knock, and they let me out. But the point I'm trying to make is I was standing there in this jail cell when the door slid shut, and I heard the crash. I think I will never forget that sound, to know that you are locked in. You are one with somebody else in the worst situation you can imagine. This is solidarity. This is this gospel in action. It will make us uncomfortable. We can't just think that religion is to make us feel good. And by the way, hopefully it does often lift our spirits. But it also has to challenge us because we are in this together. We are hungry, and somebody comes to us. They are hungry, we come to them. And in the unity of compassion, the Lord is always present.